Hello, welcome, and good
Thank-
morning
Good morning. Yes. Where are you?
in Istanbul.
Oh, fantastic. That's
So
lovely.
it's like almost 9 in the evening.
Okay.
We are ready to rock now.
Okay,
Our
great.
interview. This is our radio station, and this is Radio Eksen, the only alternative radio station now in Turkey.
Great.
Exactly. So we are going to talk about your new album, which is going to be released in October. So we have like 15 minutes, more or
Okay.
less. So I'm going to ask the questions so quickly.
Mhm.
But I want to tell you that your voice and your sound is my childhood. I grew with it, so it's very important. If you have ever make an interview with a Turkish journalist before.
I have. I have.
Oh,
In
really?
fact, yeah, I have. I'm not certain what decade, but I it may have been Rage Against the Machine. It may have been Audioslave, but I have. Yeah.
Okay. So,
I've been in Turkey, but only at the airport.
oh, really? You've never
Yeah.
visited here before?
Never. I hoped it was one of the places where I was considering going on my honeymoon. It's a beautiful country that I would love to visit at some point. So.
Oh, so let's make it
Yes,
some
I'd love
time.
to. I'd play a
Yeah.
show. By all means.
Okay. So the Atlas Underground Fire. Let's talk about it. Just tell us the story because it's a pandemic recorded LP. So
Yeah. Yes.
I don't know what's going on over there as far as we
Yeah.
can read in the news and see in the news, but so it's very once in 100 years it happens to us. So tell us about the
Sure.
LP.
Sure. Well, from the time that I was 17 years old until March of 2020, I've been constantly writing, recording, and performing music. And when the world shut down, it was a time that was there was a lot of anxiety and depression. I have a studio at my home, but I don't know how to work it. The only knob they let me turn is the volume knob on the studio. So even though I have a studio, I wasn't going to be able to be recording music. And I found inspiration from a very unlikely source, which was Kanye West. I read an interview where Kanye West said that he had recorded the vocals to a couple of his hit albums on the voice memo of his phone. And I thought, well, maybe I can record guitar into my phone as well. And so I did. I bypassed all of the studio stuff, just put my phone on a chair, hit the red button on the voice memo, and started cranking out guitar riffs, which ended up sounding pretty great. I then would send those riffs to artists, producers, and engineers around the world. And that began the process of the Atlas Underground Fire. During a time where I was completely alone in my studio, I began to build this global community of collaborators. And so in some ways, this record was an antidepressant. It was a way to find sort of a light during a very, very dark and depressing time, and to continue to be creative at a time where we were not able to be face to face with other musicians.
Yeah, I can see. And so your studio is in the basement of your mother, right?
Yes, yeah. So it's I once again put my mom, my 97-year-old mom is upstairs right now. And so much like I started when I was 17 playing in my mom's basement, this record was also made in my mom's basement.
So you were mentioning about your kids. I think my kid and yours are exactly in the same ages. Like mine is 11 years old.
Yeah, I have a 10-year-old and an 11-year-old. Yeah.
So what do you suggest to those kids? It's a pandemic and the world is going crazy and you have a new album.
Yeah.
But on the other side, what do you suggest the new kids listening to Rage Against the Machine?
Yeah. Well, I mean,
or Audioslave or your new album?
Right. Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is for young people, they find their own music. And I've been exposed to a lot of great new music by my 10-year-old and 11-year-old. Now, my 10-year-old is also a fan of rock and roll too, and he sort of appreciates electric guitar. One of the reasons why I made this Atlas Underground album is I think that the electric guitar is the greatest instrument ever invented by humanity. There's no instrument with more sort of nuance and subtlety and power and sexiness and, like sort of righteous indignation. But it's an instrument that I believe also has a future, not just a past. And so the reason why on a record like the Atlas Underground, I'm collaborating with people like Bruce Springsteen and Eddie Vedder and Bring Me the Horizon and Fantagram and Chris Stapleton and Grandson and Mike Posner and Damian Marley and Prototype and Femme and Refused and Sama.
You were talking about the future of the guitar.
Yeah, the future of the guitar, and that Yeah, and that forging these collaborations with both new artists, to expose the great instrument of the electric guitar to a new generation in 2021 and beyond.
Yeah. So let's move to why I ask about your mother and the kids. I think that they are on the new album also.
Yes, yes. There's one song called "Charmed." I'm sure that has 3 generations of Morellos on it. It has my 10-year-old, my 11-year-old, and my 97-year-old mom all hyping up the bass drop on that big jam.
We are really looking forward to it. And I'm moving to another subject now. Rage Against the Machine 2022 tour. Is it going to happen?
Well, we rebooked the United States tour for 2022, and I'm hopeful it happens. I mean, I have a lot of friends who are out on tour now, and the tours start, the tours stop, the tours start, the tours stop. So I'm hopeful by spring of next year that there might be some. It might be safe to, because the most important thing is you want a live performance to be joyful and a celebration, and and have an activist component that is real, and not be something that's going to harm the audience or the crew or the band. So I'm hopeful that time will come.
Yeah, without a mosh pit, there won't be any Rage Against the Machine concert.
Yeah, I know. That's the thing too, is our concerts are particularly COVID unsafe in that regard. So
how about the Alice Underground Fire? Are you going to tour for
there's no plans to tour, because I'm working on this, and the record comes out in October, and hopefully next year we'll be rehearsing with Rage. But the one song I would like to talk more about is the Bruce Springsteen Eddie Vedder collaboration of Highway to Hell. Yeah, which is really one of my favorite bands of all time, AC/DC. And for about 6 years I played with the E Street Band. We were in Perth, Australia, the home of Bon Scott, the singer of AC/DC. And I went and paid my respects at his grave, and then later ran into Bruce Springsteen in the hotel bar. And I said, do you think there's a way that AC/DC and the E Street Band might overlap? And he said, well, I never really thought about that before, but I'll think about it now. And we began rehearsing Highway to Hell at soundcheck. And a few days later, we found ourselves in a big Melbourne football stadium, like 80,000 people there. And Eddie Vedder happened to be there because he was on a solo tour at the time. And I had an idea. I knocked on Bruce's dressing room door. I said, hey, we are in Australia, where AC/DC is king, and where the song Highway to Hell is like the unofficial national anthem of Australia. What if we open the concert with Highway to Hell with Eddie Vedder singing? And he was like, that sounds like a good idea. So we did. And it was as, cathartic and exciting moment of rock and roll as I've ever seen. So as I was finishing the Atlas Underground Fire record with a lot of these young artists, I wanted to make a song with my rock brothers. And I remembered that night on that stage, and what an intense and magical moment it was, seeing 2 of the greatest singers of all time, Bruce Springsteen and Eddie Vedder, singing one of the greatest rock and roll songs of all time, Highway to Hell. So that's where that song came from.
It's wonderful, really. We've been playing that song, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 times a day.
Awesome.
And great response. And he's not getting any older. Do you think Bruce Springsteen, I mean, knock on wood, of course.
On that song, he sent me his vocals for it, and I texted him back, and I was just like, dude, you sound like the king of rock and roll. Like 72, 3, however old Bruce Springsteen, he's just like, he sounds like the king of rock and roll.
It's awesome. Really great. So before, if anything happens to connection again, I want to ask about that. It's not about the album, but I think it's very important for you too. The female guitarist in Afghanistan.
Yes.
Do you want to say anything about it, so we can maybe spread something?
Sure. I've worked with this organization. They're called the Miraculous Love Kids, MLK. It's an organization founded by an American rock and roll guitar player who just moved to Afghanistan to help these street children, orphans, and people who had young girls who had traumatic events in their lives, and using music as a way to rehabilitate them. And they went to school at this place, and then with the quick fall of Afghanistan, these girls are in great danger, because they've been playing Western music. They've been taught by an American, and they're in hiding now. And so we're working every possible effort to get them, to safety. But it's a very dangerous situation for them. And so, I'm in touch with the guy who ran the school every day. We're just working on all sorts of scenarios to hopefully get them to safety, because they're wonderful kids, and and just the joy and the redemption that they found in, in music is exactly what music is for. And now that they're being kind of hunted because of that love of music is really a tragedy. And so we're hopeful of getting them out.
So you don't hear anything new about the situation?
No, not that I can share. We're just trying. We're trying different stuff
hopefully.
Yeah.
So, and the book, I want to just mention about your book, the photographs, and it's very hard from Istanbul to find it. But if your fans would like to have it, can you just tell about your book?
Sure. It's a book called Whatever It Takes. It's basically a photo biography. For that, again, it was something during pandemic times. I was like, looking for ways to, connect with the outside world, and I had these, a lifetime of photographs of me, rock and roll photographs, behind the scenes photographs of some of the biggest, most exciting rock concerts of all time, and some of the smallest, most intense, concerts of all time, with commentary through it as well. And it was a great way to, to look back on the first 30 years of my, music career and the life that led me to be the guitarist and activist that I am.
Yeah, I just saw just a few photographs from Whatever It Takes, and I saw a James Baldwin backdrop photo.
Yes. Yeah.
Is that true? Is that James?
Yeah,
Baldwin?
that was on the previous Atlas Underground tour. There was another Atlas Underground record that came out in 2018, which had 20 different collaborators on it. And one of the challenges is when you're a solo artist with all these collaborators, like how do you go on tour? So we basically, it was myself and the person who organized the Roger Waters last couple of tours, The Wall and the Us and Them tour. We put together, it was like part art installation, part illegal rave, part heavy metal mosh pit. We put together like this kind of installation with a lot of imagery, including James Baldwin. So it was a fun and different way to tour, and I'd like to do something like that again.
Can you link the two Atlas Underground albums, or just completely different?
No, absolutely. The main link in them is that they're both solo albums and band albums. The thing that I like about being a solo artist is you get a purity of vision, and like you get to, the artwork is my idea, and my guitar leads the way in each of the tracks. But when you're playing with a band or when you're playing with other musicians, you get chemistry and you create something that neither of you could have created alone. So with the both Atlas Underground records, it's kind of the best of both worlds, where there's this overarching vision that is mine, but each of the individual tracks goes in very unexpected places. It pushes me as an artist. It pushes me as a guitarist. It doesn't ever let me feel, sort of safe in what I've done before, because there's a new person with new ideas who I'm going to react to in an entirely different way. So that's one of the things why it's so much fun to make this kind of record.
Great. So the last question: from all these years, you've been collaborating with so many great artists, including Johnny Cash, and I don't know to say it, Chris Cornell, and etc. Just if you can just name one that I want to be with him or her for the rest of my life, or you are in the island and you can just choose one collaborator. Who will be?
Yeah. Oh wow. I mean, really, the one artist that I collaborated with a couple of times, but never really kind of like went all the way collaborate, was Joe Strummer of The Clash. We recorded a couple of songs together. One on one of his records, and then the collaboration with Johnny Cash on Redemption Song. But I always thought I never was able to look at him as like a peer. I was always like kind of intimidated by the great Joe Strummer, even though he was very down to earth and not at all intimidating. But I wish that I had said to him, "Hey, you and I make a record. What happens if we make a record? And I never had the courage to do that, and then he passed away, and so but I am glad that I did get to play with him a couple of times.
It's great. He was born in Ankara, in Turkey.
Yeah.
So do you have anything to say to your Turkish audience?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I wish that I had been able to play there dozens of times through the years, and I hope to one day be able to play in your beautiful country. I am deeply thankful for the decades of support for Rage Against the Machine and Audioslave and my solo work and Prophets of Rage, and how the Turkish fans have been so great, despite the fact that having never toured there, have been always open to the music that I made before and the music I'm making now. I'm really appreciative of that.
Thank you very much, Tom Morello. It's pleasure, really great pleasure.
Thanks so
speaking with
much. Thanks. And again, I hope to be able to see you all at some point in the future.
Yeah, thank
Okay.
you.
Take care. Stay safe.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.